Alright, so this is part one of my three-part series on when to cap and when not to cap, and sort of this idea of how you decide when to do one or the other. And I sort of had this idea when I was playing last night. So these three games were in relatively close succession, and it just made me think about the differences about what putting cap pressure does for your team, for the enemy team, and how it can change the outcome of these games. And so this is the AMX 1390, the French Tier 8 light tank, and so south spawn or on live oaks, you want to go up into this neighborhood over here so you can spot their A-line crossing. It's really easy for your E-line to snipe into that A-line as long as they have lights, so it's always nice to have a fast tank up here. And if you're not in an auto-loader, a lot of these buildings along this line are destructible, and if you shoot them down, it makes it even easier for your team to shoot them. And so I get lit on the way in. So they know I'm here. And so you can just sit in this bush over here or on this side, pretty much anywhere, and you can spot them as they start to cross. The Comet YOLOs me. Again, you know, they already knew that I was here, so that's probably why he came in here. And then so I'm going to let my spot drop again. And then we don't have much on the south, but see how this guy's charging forward. He needs to play more conservative, and you see that they have a lot of tanks on that side now. So they don't have much up here, so these guys need to get on their horse. They're taking a little bit too much time. I mean, we've got a lot of intel about what they're sending in, but they're still, you know, they need to be up on this A line and pushing east on this A line. I mean, it's Black Prince. In the meantime, you also have to use this time to keep an eye on the south. So they're pushing in on our south. And they also have a Ferdinand in this town, which you probably shouldn't take a Ferdinand there. It's not a very good place to take Ferdinand. So they do turn out to have a decent number of tanks here, even though they're more of the lower tiers, but they're mostly in this B-line town, so our A-line should be able to just push in pretty easily. Okay, but now our south is completely gone, so we have to go back, because they won their flank before we won ours. So it's really easy to spot the cap from the ditch, and then hopefully you have appropriate support from the E-line. So we see like our T-54, I think it's going to run away here, but essentially what will happen is I called for a defend the base, hopefully they'll listen, and then you push south to try to spot. And you don't want to try to spot them from the E-line because it's kind of sketchy and you're kind of in the open, but if you're in the ditch, then it forces them to at least YOLO into the ditch to get you. And then once you're in the ditch, you can use pretty much any of these bushes up here to spot the cap. And then you just have to hope that your team can pen a T-32 from the front. And then again, it's still really easy to to spot the cap. We're getting some more guys slowly coming back this way, but you know, just between these two guys, they were able to take out the T-32 at least. And then I kind of screwed this up. I pull up in kind of the wrong place, and the Patton spots me on the way up and shoots me. Well, that's fine, at least he's lit, so theoretically somebody will shoot him. And then now we have like 5 guys back on that E line, so that's more than enough. All they need is lights. And then again, it's just a matter of being patient. Eventually this Patton is going to figure out that he's getting shot by tanks that he can't see, so he needs to push forward. So then you have to be careful that he doesn't light you, because I'm, you know, at this point I'm one shot. I do want to make sure that he stays lit though, because I need him to die before he gets to the ditch. And then just this one last guy. Okay, and then our cap is clear. And then so we've gone from having a health disadvantage, we were down like 2k or something like that, I think, to now that we actually have a slight health advantage, right? And we've got basically 7 tanks left. This guy's not in a good position, he's gonna die. But you see what we do here is we split. That's not necessarily bad. These guys go down south, these guys go north. It's a 3-3 split. It's not that bad considering that they only have 3 tanks left. But what these guys need to do is they need to get up in this area over here where these guys can cover them. And then it's kind of like you want to synergize with each other. Like this group needs to cover this group, and this group needs to cover this group. So then as these guys move forward, these guys push forward. So if they're over here shooting these guys, then they're also getting shot by these guys. And what these guys don't want to do is drive over on this side of the ridge, because if they run into the dudes over there, then there's no place where they're going to be able to get support fire from. And so of course, because they're pubs, they all go over here, and they sort of try to make it down here, but you'll see that they don't even really make it down there. And then so these guys all have to wait. I mean, the Centurion probably isn't quite one shot, but he's pretty darn close to one shot. The 416 and I are both one shot. So most of our health, you know, in quotation marks, is down on this side. And then again, pretty much if they push up here, once they get to about right here, then these guys need to push up to about right here. That way they can sort of cover each other. What they do is they push over these tracks, and so these guys get a bunch of free shots on them as they're driving along this straightaway. And there's nothing that these guys over here can do about it. So we have to push in over here, despite the fact that we don't know what's over here yet. So we're doing essentially the same thing. These guys can no longer support us in the position that we're moving to, but we have no choice because these guys are just going to die if they keep doing what they're doing. Which, of course, they will. And the Centurion is pushed through the back here, which suggests that the FCM is no longer there, which means that they're all probably right here, so I'm going to see if I can spot them. The Centurion is in a good place where he should be able to shoot them and essentially be not quite outside draw, but might be outside of detect. So we do find all their tanks here. So we're low health here, but we kind of want to play careful. We don't want them to be able to get back to cap. And I'm going to bounce a bunch of shots off the backs of these guys. And then the Centurion 7-1 is charging the Patton, and our Centurion is able to kill the FCM. And so you see this 416, he's headed towards the cap right there. So I'm going to start heading back as well. We know that there are Centurions on that other side. The T-54 is either flanking to help. I'm not exactly sure why. It's not like their Centurion was low on health. and then he's coming back right now. Our Centurion should have. There's no way the Centurion's going to get back. He should have screened the cap, and then the 416 and I will cap. And so this T-54 is by these trains over here. And so right now, let's say we have 221 health between the two of us. You know, we're both one shot against two mostly full tier 9 tanks. So the 416 just needs to hide behind the IS-3, and I'm hiding behind the 416. I'm not going to get detected at this distance, but if the 416 dies, then I'm going to die. I mean, there's no way that I'm going to be able to cap on my own. The Centurion 7-1 hits the IS-3, which means there's no way that any of them are going to get back in time to reset the cap. So really the key to that was we could have theoretically tried to cap that earlier when we first went over there, but it would have, given the distance that they were away, it would have been very easy for them to just drive over and have plenty of time to kill us. But once they started driving down this other way towards where that patent was, you know, the Centurion went over on the patent into the ditch, which means that he has to drive out of it. That allows you enough time to do that cap, just barely. But pretty much if that 416 wasn't on the cap, then there's no reason for me to be on the cap per se. I guess I could have called them over there. But another thing was that allowing our Centurion to kill the FCM also took out one guy who's close enough to act and has the speed to actually reset. That Centurion, though, should have probably stayed on this side of the tracks over here and screened the cap so that when their Centurion came back, he didn't just, you know, have an unhurried shot at the 416. And so if you look at the stats of that game, it wasn't like some tremendous game by us. I mean, we did 2k damage, we had 2k spotting basically. The bulk of the damage in that game was done by that Centurion who went on the town side on that A line, and he did a good job of dealing damage. Our team in general did not really play that well. I don't think that we deserved to win, so to speak, but their team wasn't vigilant. These guys, you know, all they needed to do, the only thing that they should have been telling themselves is the only way we can lose this is if we get capped out, because they had so much more health than our team. But they didn't do that, and so it ended up costing them. Alright, and so that was part 1, so this is part 2. And just in review, so I'm talking about when you should cap and when you shouldn't cap, and I'm using 3 examples from 3 different matches that I had last night. And so this is the Panther M10, the tier 7 German premium medium. It's an encounter mode Himmelsdorf. So in encounter mode, you don't really need to cap pressure particularly early, but you do want to try to control this center area, because if you control this center area, much like on regular Himmelsdorf, you'll get shots on the hill, and you'll be able to sort of dictate the pace on this sort of D line and G line. So we're going to head over here towards this 3 line. Yeah, I don't know why that guy just decided to turn into me. And then we're sending most of our 8s up there, but we've got a lot of tanks not going up there. So hopefully our 8s can not YOLO die. And we have 1-8, the Roomba, coming down here, which is going to be really good support on this line. And then you see that they've pushed this A43 up on this hill over here, so we're going to be able to get shots on him. We've got some YOLO lights, but that's okay for now. And so we can see that they have their 8s on the hill. We've got a lot of tanks in this sort of southwest here who need to be a little bit more aggressive, including us. Especially once you see all these tanks up here, you have to push in and get this side cleared as soon as possible before you lose too much map control. So Obey and I are going to push around to the backs of these guys. And then at this point we're down almost 4,000 health. We know that the bulk of their guys are on the hill. So at this point you can try to cap out. You have to remember that on encounter it takes longer. So we may or may not have time. There's an ARL over here. But see how most of their guys aren't really in position to reset quite yet. Not sure what this Panther M10 is doing. He can push in here. This RL may or may not be a problem, although it doesn't look like he's pushing in there. The D line, the A43, is occupied with that AMX for a while. But we have a chance to cap before the hill gets here. We see the IS-6 moving west on the G line. He's probably going to get here in time, right? He's still got 30 seconds of cap left. He's probably going to get here in like 15 or 15 seconds, let's say. The KV-13 has appeared down here, which is problematic, especially since this T-25 AT is blocking my retreat. And at this point, probably not going to be able to cap. Somebody got off cap. I'm not sure who got off cap, or somebody got reset. Maybe it was the T-25 AT. So we have to bail. Like, there's no point for us to stay on the cap. And that's one of the things is that you have to realize when you're not going to be able to cap, and then when you're not going to be able to cap, just get off and go someplace else, and don't just sit there futilely. So they're pushing in on this south side, so Obeyesh and I are going to push north. And what you want to do is you want to carve out a little secure area for yourself, and then you can turn around and then deal with the rest of the guys. And then so they still have all of their 8s up. And then Obey is going to flank. And we presume that everything else is still in front of us. And so I drive out and I figure out that there is indeed a KV-5 in front of me. But Obeyesh is on his flank now, so he's in a bad position because one of us is going to get shots on him at any given time, and hopefully I can pen. So pretty much if he turns his turret towards me, Obeyesh will get free shots, and if he turns away, then I'll get free shots. Obeyesh is having, in the 23 E3, the pen on that tank is not very good. And see now how he's trying to back up out of my line? So I don't just sit here where I was, I push in so that I can continue moving to that flank, because otherwise Obeyesh is just going to get killed. And then the Roomba is going to take the KV-13, which only leaves the Tiger P. And then, so the moral of the story, though, is because, you know, we saw that they had a lot of tanks on the hill, so we swept through here really quickly. We were probably close to capping if the T-25 AT didn't get reset, but who knows. Once you lose those points, though, there's no reason to stay on it. You just get off and do something, try to do something more productive. So even though we were down health, we managed to push out on our side, on that north side, get out, and that basically allowed us to have the position to actually, you know, do something effective, which was put pressure on those tier 8s that were coming up through the 3 line. Alright, and then, so if you look at the stats for that, so our Roomba did a ton of damage, and again, that's one of the pluses of going to the 1-2 line. You get shots on a lot of different places in the map, including the hill. And the fact that we stayed alive by getting off the cap, we didn't sit on the cap and wait for the IS-6 and the T-34 and the KV-5 to just push us, especially when you're in tanks with little pew-pew guns and no armor like the T-23E3 and the Panther M10. You don't want to trade with heavies unless you absolutely have to. You want to be able to flank and shoot them in the sides, and we did that very effectively. The other key point is that, so when Oberist took his tank into the middle of Himmelsdorf near the end of the game to flank the KV-5, that's huge because it creates another lane of firing that the KV-5 has to account for, and he can only aim at one person at a time. So with that turret break, one of us is always gonna have shots. Alright, so this is part 3 in the series of when to cap and when not to cap. And so this is in the Object 416, Tier 8 Soviet Medium, on Hidden Village. And I like going into the village in Hidden Village. I think it's really typically underused. I see more people go there now, but when you look at this composition of our team has very little armor, right? We have the T-28 Proto, and that's pretty much it. Whereas their team, they've got a lot of armor. So you kind of expect to lose this side. So Barris says that he's going to play in the middle, so I say that I'm going to play the city, and we'll try to cover each other and synergize off of each other in that sense. And then, so if you look at our dispersion, it probably matches our composition, right? The T-28 is going up here. He's taking a few tanks with him. They should be really passive up here or defensive up here because, again, it's a composition mismatch for them over here, whereas we technically probably have the advantage on the side being, you know, more mobile. And so I'll try to spot this area. And then the 416, you'd want to try not to get shot if you can possibly avoid it. So I'm not going to sit on this line and just try to trade with people. So Barris has run into a T-32 in the middle. So if you go over here, it's really easy to shoot those guys. You just need to make sure that this side of the little church is clear. And then our JP is just shooting him from over in this area as well. And then now, right, so we can see that they're pushing in rather aggressively on the south, as they should, given their armor mismatch. So we need to try to clear this up as quickly as possible. Right, we're down 2k health. We probably started out down some health just because of the comp, but I forgot to check how much. And then so we cleared up this town, right? And so they've pushed through on this side, and we see that they still have the bulk of their tanks here. So all Oberus has to do is go from his side of the hill back to the other side of the hill, which is what he's going to do. So now he's on that south, he's going to move over to that southeast side of the hill because they're going to try to push up behind him. And then we just basically need to reverse our positions. Ideally these guys would come back. You need maybe one guy to pressure over here and get shots this way. And then so they're up about 3,000 health at this point. And our M6 is about to go down. And then so now really what they should do is put some cap pressure and draw us back, you know, have us leave this space here. But what they're going to do is they're going to try to push Oberus, who's basically a hold down Pershing in the middle over here without, you know, any sort of support behind him. So I started going over to the west because I thought that I was going to have to spot the cap, but I see them all coming over to Oberus now. Because people just like killing Unicums that much, I guess. And then I had to move off the line that I'm on because they're about to push over that other side of the hill, and also because I made the shot. And also I keep missing. So at this point, all Oberus has to do is just keep peeking over, keep these guys on us, right? And we know that they're, at least right now, they're not pushing off the cap, or pushing towards our cap. They still have a 2,700 health advantage. This Panther is pushed up underneath the bay, so I gotta try to get him too. And then we see the IS-6 is pushed up. And then now they're putting cap pressure, right? They've pushed in, not one at a time, but a few at a time. But now it's probably too late, because all we have to do is take down this T-29. And we have plenty of time, because there's just one guy on cap. There's like random rocks here that you can't go over. So there's still plenty of time, 45 seconds. There's nothing else in front of me other than the IS-3. And it's relatively easy to spot the cap from this side. And Oberus got himself killed because he didn't come back to the other side of the hill. And then there's only those two tanks left, and we know the general area where they're at. So it'll be really easy to come around on this flank, then all the T-34 has to do is spot, and we should be able to finish them off. And then, so the moral of the story for this particular match is that if those guys had applied more cap pressure earlier, or even if just that IS-3 that ended up with the cap on the cap had just gone there right off the bat, it would have put a lot more pressure on Oberis and I to get back, which would have given their team a lot easier shots on us rather than having to push into us and die. They could have put some cap pressure and drawn us out. But they didn't, and so that's an example of when you should put some cap pressure in order to get people to come back to you, because we went from being like 3 or 4k health down to winning that game because they basically tried to push across an open field against a hold down Pershing who had sniper support from a 416, and that's probably not what you want to do in most situations. And so if we look at the stats on that, there's not really much to say. We got to farm a lot of damage because Oberis is like a magnet, and everybody and their mother tried to kill him, and all I had to do was just defend him basically. And then it's really just a matter of resetting, and there was plenty of time to reset because there wasn't really that much cap pressure on us, and that's pretty much the difference in that game. The idea that, you know, if you're going to give us as much time as we need to win, then, you know, we're going to try to use all the amount of time that you give us. Whereas if you put us on a timer and say, okay, well, you have 50 seconds where you either have to win against these, you know, heavies in the center, or you're going to lose automatically, you know, then all of a sudden it becomes more difficult for us. So that's one reason why you should put cap pressure. So I hope this sort of series of replays sort of illuminates the thought-making process, or the decision-making process behind when you should cap and when you shouldn't cap, and why it's not capping for capping's sake is not always important, but capping in order to put pressure on people to draw them out of secured positions is very important. And sometimes, you know, like in the 1390 game, you need to cap just because you have no other way to win. So just hope you can keep these things in mind the next time you're sitting there asking yourself whether you should be capping or not capping or chasing down tanks. These are things that you can consider. Also, always remember, you can always get off the cap. So, you know, if you want to go and kill all the tanks, draw them out. If you have enough time, and if you know you're going to win, then you can get off the cap and kill them. You know, you can make those decisions on the fly, but, you know, always have some sort of informed thought process on the matter when you do it. So I hope this was somewhat helpful, and thanks for watching.